All right, I'm here with my good friend, Dr. Spencer Barron. We're here at the Ultimate Sports Institute in Florida. Dr. Barron is a sports physician, founder of Neurosport Elite. And what we're going to be talking about today is shoulder pain, but more specifically, identifying or some self-tests to help identify what specifically is causing that pain, because there's so many different things that can cause shoulder pain. So we're going to do a little bit of a self-assessment here, but I think what would be really helpful is helping people understand what is the rotator cuff.
Well, rotator cuff, there's 4 of those muscles, and what they do is all in charge of some sort of rotation of the arm. The fact that the arm does all sorts of different things, you got a lot of muscles that allow that to happen. Think of the word sits, S-I-T-S, like he sits down. Supraspinatus, Infraspinatus, Teres minor, and Subscapularis are the 4 rotator cuff muscles. I know those are big words, but you know what? You want to go through and I'll show
Absolutely.
How to do a little self-test. One way to do it is an actual muscle test. If you put your hand on your belly and really align your shoulder straight up like this, if you push into your belly and that hurts, that's upper subscapularis.
So where would they feel that? As I'm pressing in here, if I had a problem with my upper subscapularis, where would I feel that?
You would either feel that in the belly of the muscle where it attaches, which is right underneath the shoulder blade, like right in there, or they would feel it somewhere here. They'd go, oh, it's like a deep pain, because it is deep.
I think that's an important thing to note. If you feel a pain and you open up an anatomy book and you look at these muscles, it's very confusing, because just because you feel a pain here or here doesn't mean that's where the problem comes from. For example, the subscapularis technically is back here, but the tendon wraps around the front of the humerus. So if you have irritation in the tendon, you'll feel it here. If you have potentially maybe a tear or irritation in the muscle belly, you're going to feel it back here.
Yep, exactly.
So last video we talked about another kind of shoulder pain, which some people call the 5th rotator cuff muscle, even though it's not, which is the long head of the biceps, because the tendon crosses the shoulder joint, so it helps stabilize our humerus, or this ball and socket. So that's a pain that you usually feel right here. It's almost always tendon-related pain for the most part.
And it's pretty superficial. You can put your finger on it, and a good way to test that one, not to recap what we did the last video, is if you position your arm, it's really specific. You can move it out here, no pain. The moment you run under that bicep, long head of the bicep tendon, you'll feel pain, and you're pretty close to what it might be, or the deltoid.
So that was my question, considering that it could be because the tendon for our subscap comes up here. So how do you identify the difference between maybe long head of the biceps, irritation in the front, versus tendon for the subscap in the front? So that was one. This is identifying the biceps.
Hand on the belly to test, push down. The elbow has to stay stationary. Push down if that hurts. That's more likely a part of the subscapularis. The other test for the lower subscapularis is put your hand on the back like this, and if you can reach back and touch my hand, if that hurts, you're pretty much banking on a subscapularis muscle.
That's lower part.
The lower part.
So the hand on belly tests the upper part,
and
reaching back
is the lower part. Now here's the thing. That's getting real specific. But subscapularis, this is your test for that one. Now, we got 3 more. You ready?
So let's talk about the next one, because it's so closely related, which is our teres minor.
Yes.
Which is also back there.
So teres minor it's located right there, okay? So one of the tests for that is if we bring the arm up, pardon me, I'm gonna come around in front like so, bring the arm up, square up like so, and if I have you hold your arm right here, and I push down and you can't resist, ow, that hurts, you're pretty much banking on the teres minor again.
So self-assessment, if I were to try to keep the elbow stabilized, and if I were to resist with my own hand here, that would be maybe a self-assessment.
Correct. Now, even more so, if you're really banged up at the teres minor, if you just put your arm like this and the weight of your fist creates discomfort, you can bank on the teres minor.
Okay. So real quick, just to recap, the role of both the teres minor and subscap, how is that helping stabilize the shoulder?
Ooh, think of it this way. Think of the tire on your car. It has 5 lug nuts that secure the tire on. If any one of them are loose, you're gonna have a balance problem. So if any one of them are loose, so imagine how complicated that shoulder is. We take it for granted.
Right.
So if one of them is banged up, others will compensate, and you may end up with a bigger problem if it isn't taken care of properly from the first. And you know, think about the elbow. It's so simple. It moves in one plane, here and here. And yeah, you'll have your problems with the elbow, but that shoulder, man, it is complicated. So we got 2 more muscles to go over.
I'm ready. Let's do infraspinatus.
Ready? I was waiting for you to pick which muscle. All right, let's go. Infraspinatus is, I'm going to hold, in fact, let's use this arm for the moment, since I'm here. We position it this way. I help you bring it out, or you bring it out from here. If you can't hold this position, then you have an infraspinatus problem. Now here's the other thing too. If you want to add a little resistance, go up against a wall, make believe I'm a wall, and if you push against that, if that hurts, that may be infraspinatus.
So here's the thing where it gets a little tricky. Like I said, going back to the example of opening an anatomy book, the reason it's confusing is our subscapularis, just like it sounds, is basically underneath our scapula. Whereas the infraspinatus is more superficial and it's sitting on top, but both of them are still on the back. So that's where it becomes a challenge identifying what is what. And that's why these little self-assessment exercises are so important, because you can't simply say, oh, it hurts here, therefore it's this.
Right, exactly. And that's always a big problem for people. So now, you want to go over the 4th one?
Supraspinatus.
Yeah, man.
Have you ever done maybe lateral raises and gone, oh man, it hurts right there?
Yeah, that's always a rough one.
Yeah.
Now, that could happen from stuff you do in the gym, but let's go over an easy test that you can do on your own. One, we call it the drop arm test. If you can raise your arm up, James, and most people, they start to feel pain right about here. Now, if that is true and your palm is facing down, let's start again, drop down. I'm not even gonna put resistance on it. If you can rotate your hand like this, palm up, and raise it up, and suddenly, now square up, there you go. If you can raise it up and go, woo, check it out, then what you've done is you have slipped the supraspinatus out of the way, and now you're not pinching off that tendon.
So long story short, palm down, if I raise up, feel a pain.
Ow.
Ow. Palm up, no pain, more than likely supraspinatus.
Yes. Here's one more test. We call it the empty can test. If you go ahead and act like you're emptying a can, thumb down, and if that hurts alone, then that's a problem. Now, if you want to add a little resistance and that really lights up, that's pretty much supraspinatus. That's how we test for that for sure.
So we're going to be covering each of these different muscles. First step, identifying what it is. You have to know what it is. Next step is identifying potential causes of the problem, especially here in the gym. What are some common movements, different lifts that can cause an issue? So that'll be the next step, and each one of these is going to be a separate video. So we'll cover infraspinatus, supraspinatus, all of them. We already did in our last video, long head of the biceps, so check that one out. So we're going to follow that same format for each of these, but figured this was an appropriate step to help people kind of zero in on what's going on, because it's just so easy to generalize and say, my shoulder hurts.
Right. And you know, we talk about a lot of the injuries that can happen in the gym. You know what I find most often the problem? And it's not just the gym, and if you play tennis, or if you're a pitcher or a quarterback or anything like that, yeah, I get it. But you know what the big problem is? The stuff they do at home.
Right.
The things that you don't even realize. And the worst one is, you did it just a moment ago.
The way we sleep?
Sleep.
Yeah.
The way we sleep. Sleeping is one of the most killer habits that we have to shoulder and neck problems, but we can talk about that at another time.
Yeah, I think those are perfect videos for identifying each one of those, because each one of these, I mean, there's so many different things we could dive into. If we were to tackle all these in one video, this would be a very long video. So I think it more relates to whatever you're feeling is what you're going to be most interested in, why this video is important for you to be able to identify it and know which video to watch next.
Absolutely.
So we're gonna knock out each of these, so watch for subsequent videos talking about each of these different muscles. We'll identify that, and then we're gonna move on. We'll talk about elbows, knees, hips, all that good stuff, low back, and what are some of the causes, what are some corrections you can make in the gym to avoid it, or to even strengthen those muscles, which strengthening is one of the best things you can do.
One of the big things that will be a good thing to recognize is that you don't have to stop training when you have an injury. There's ways to train around it, but it depends on who you're asking, because most physicians will tell you, oh, bed rest and take some medication or anything like that. The reality is, somebody who knows what they're doing can work around and keep that you said it just a moment ago, strengthening even an injured muscle, because if you rest and do nothing, what happens? The muscle heals, but it gets weak and deconditioned, and you go crazy from not training.
Yeah, exactly. By the way, quick disclaimer, this whole conversation is not a substitute for going to see a physician. This is just a way for you to do maybe an initial self-assessment. But if you're really in pain, I recommend seeing someone like Dr. Barron. It's like taking your car into the shop, you know?
True.
Some things you can fix on your own, and there's things you probably should take to an expert.
I always say, if you feel like you're a Ferrari, go to a Ferrari mechanic, you know, not just...
Don't go to Jiffy Lube.
Jiffy Lube. Exactly.
He's way too humble to admit it, but really an expert in this. 20 years working with the Miami Dolphins, working with the NFL, Major League Baseball, National Hockey League, you name it. So,
My pleasure. My pleasure.
all right, guys, we'll see you next video.